Arthur Faram is an investigative historian in the field of ancient cultures. He is the author of Ancient Signposts, and a recent discovery of his, actually, has unlocked secrets and mysteries of ancient times. We are very fortunate to have him here. Please welcome Arthur Faram.
How are we doing on the volume? Is that all right?
Oh, your mic is up.
Uh-oh.
No wonder.
How are we doing now? That's a lot better. My name's Arthur Faram, and I am an investigative historian, and I'd like to thank the Inside Edge for inviting me today. They've been very gracious, and I really appreciate it. You're probably wondering what geoglyphology is. It's quite a big word to start with, but the word comes about from the word geo and the word glyph. Geo meaning earth, and glyph means a writing of some sort. You're probably familiar with petroglyphs, which is writing on stone, and familiar with hieroglyphs, which is writing on paper or stone. A geoglyph is nothing more than a writing on the face of the earth. And this is not a new science. It's been used since Atlantis, the Phoenicians, the Egyptians, the Celts, the Portuguese, the Vikings, and since I don't go to their meetings, I'm not positive, but I think the Masons are using it also. But so it's not a new science. The governments, the high government officials of countries from time way back have known about this and used it, even in the design of their cities. But it has not been known to the common man until now, and it would have never been known had they not Google Earth had not invented a program that calculates in spherical geometry. Now, spherical geometry is totally different from plane geometry that we all learned in school, in that it figures angles on a circular surface, which you need to do on calculating on the Earth. On the Earth, you can have no parallel lines. On plane geometry, you can have parallel lines in 90 degrees. A 90-degree line on a 90-degree angle on a curved line is only 90 degrees at the very point where it intersects, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But we'll move on, and you're going to see the power of geoglyphology to highlight history. And you're going to see history right here today that has been hidden from all of us for several hundred years. I apologize for putting my back to you. If you can't see, you could probably move either left or right. First of all, a little lesson in geoglyphology so you can understand what we're doing. Where's what do I do with my pointer? There it is. There we go. Geoglyphology works off the angles of images on the ground and the angles of the walls of buildings. If you look at buildings that the ancients built, there are very few parallel walls. And this is what first tipped me off to start investigating that. And I found that these ancient buildings were built that way because the walls point to some place that was important to the civilization that built them. Of course, if you have a straight line, you can look in either direction. And I was asked, how do you know whether that one or that one is the correct one that it's pointing to? Well, in geoglyphology, there are certain protocols that the ancients used that tip you off as to which one is the one that you use. And I'll show you that in the next slide. Here's another type of geoglyph. It's two circles. Connect the center of both of them and it'll take you somewhere. You can connect the ends of two lines or a circular line. On a square, you've got all these different directions, including the diagonals, that you could point to. In fact, one square can point to all those different places, and there's many instances where there are that many different places of importance that it points to. There's another square with an X in it. This is called an array, where you have a starting point and several other points that it goes through that points to an important place. You'll see that in the Tenitikglyph geoglyph in Greenland, which was put there by the Vikings. And as far as I know, I'm the one that discovered it because I've never seen it before mentioned, but you're going to see it here. There's another one, two dirt mounds, same as the circles. And buildings, you're going to see that in Corral, Peru, where all the buildings have angled walls, and all you do is follow the walls, and it points in a direction, and you have to determine which one is the correct one. Okay, here's the protocols that exist for determining whether a line is a valid line or not. It could terminate at a river entrance. That's one of their favorites. Remember that these lines, for the most part, designate a territory that these people claimed as their own. And so what better point for mariners to designate as a point of reference than a river entrance? And around South America, they're all around the edge of it as well as other continents. An island is important. You can point to either the top, the bottom, or the center. If it's a small island, you can go to the center. The end point of a continent or a peninsula, another end point of a continent. You could point to the edge of a bay, a monument, another geoglyph. And here's an example of where you would not, if you had a line coming across here, just because it hit here, you wouldn't use it because there's nothing that meets the protocol at that point. Okay, these are going to be a little bit distorted because on this computer, it stretches them to the side a little bit, but that's fine. You can still see them. This is an example of a spherical geometry. Now, if this was plane geometry and you had a straight line here, both of these lines would be parallel. But in spherical geometry, since it's a curved line, there's a point where they always meet. Like I said, there's no parallel lines in spherical geometry. This can be used just like a triangle and measure the angles here, here, or here, or as the Portuguese are the biggest explorers of the world, I found out. But the Portuguese have a geoglyph right here, and they have one at Santa Barbara that takes off on a 43.5-degree angle, and it comes together like this at the very tip of Portugal. Well, that's the type of things they can do. And these things, with Google Earth, using a computer is no more accurate than what they used 10,000 years ago. And Google Earth can come within, using Google Earth over 1,000 miles, can come either exactly on the point that they used or within a couple of hundred feet. And most of that couple of hundred feet probably can be counted as continental drift. Can you imagine somebody that's smart enough to use spherical geometry 10,000 years ago? And they thought the Greeks invented it. Okay, here's the geoglyphs we're going to visit today. There's one over here called, I named it, Golfo de Sintra geoglyph right there. It sits on the Golfo de Sintra Bay. Stonehenge, I'm going to unlock the secrets of that. You've heard people talk about astronomy, and I don't followed, I'm not familiar with astronomy, so I can't say that they're wrong on a lot of these geoglyphs, the major ones. They say they're astrologically aligned. They may be, I don't know, but they certainly are aligned in geoglyphology. Here's that geoglyph that I think I discovered in Tinitikalik, Greenland. Here is the most important geoglyph in the United States called Inspiration Peak. And I call that the Mona Lisa of geoglyphs, and you'll see why. Sulphur City, I think the Vikings probably put that there because it's not referenced. All these other ones are referenced several times from around the world as ancient geoglyphs. Sulphur City is not referenced by any other ones. And I have a feeling that the Celts, you can use the words Portuguese, Galicians, Norse, Vikings interchangeably in this because they all use the same protocols, and the only thing different was the time period in which they existed. Got Chichen Itza, Mexico. I've done just about all the monuments and the pyramids in Mexico, and they all have a purpose, a geoglyphical purpose. But the one that I'm going to show you that outlines Central America, or not Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza claims the Yucatan Peninsula and the whole of the Mediterranean. A very spectacular geoglyph is the one in Corral, Peru, which outlines their territory around the entire continent of South America. As you're going to see in a minute, Stonehenge designates an area down to that very point of where the United States starts, over to here, then over to here, and then around the Celtic area, and back over this way. Okay, there's your first geoglyph, the Golfo de Sintra geoglyph. And that's what it looks like when you first see it from the air. There they are right there. I'm going to give you a close-up here in a minute. Well, that's the Golfo de Sintra Bay. That's a close-up. And I'll give you an idea. That was built in 7000 BC. And I know that, or at least before that, it was built then or before that, because there's another geoglyph over here in Egypt that brought me to this one. And as you can see, there's some very important points here. Newport, Rhode Island, 7,000 years ago was an important spot. Iceland, of the Viking fame, important spot. The island of Gomera in the Canary Islands is referenced a lot during all times. And I have a feeling, I haven't checked it out yet, I have a feeling it has something to do with Atlantis. And strangely enough, it only has one port. It's just a big volcano with one port. And 75% of the people live there are Masons.
Masons?
Yes. Nab de Playa, now there's the geoglyph that's over here in southern Egypt that brought me to this geoglyph. In Cairo, Egypt, we all know how important that is. Now this particular geoglyph has some correction factors, which is common in the really old geoglyphs before 3000 BC. They have a correction code that's necessary in order to read them correctly, and I guess they did that just so commoners couldn't figure them out. There's the Golfo de Sintra, and with the radials going at the places I outlined before. You get the southern tip of Africa, the geoglyph I was telling you about, Cairo, Iceland, the entrance to Hudson Bay. I have a map that shows that there used to be a lake over here, and Hudson Bay didn't exist until the last ice age. It punched the hole in there, and this lake drained into it. There's Newport, Rhode Island, which is very important down through time, and Trinidad. Now there's the island of Gomera there, and believe it or not, on Columbus's first voyage, he resupplied at Gomera and then came over to the United States. Christopher Columbus on his second voyage came over here and on his way home stopped at Trinidad. I don't think that was a coincidence. Okay, we all know what that is, Stonehenge. That's what it looks like from the side, the very familiar picture that we've seen. That's what it looks like from above, with the radials figured out. Not all of them. You can see there's some of the rocks there that I haven't done, but this is sufficient to show you what I'm talking about. Now you see this array here that I showed you before. There's a rock here, 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 and here. That's figured from the central point of this circle, through there, through there, through there, and it gives you these radials which go to someplace significant in the Celtic world. The Stonehenge was built in 31 BC and by the Celts. So you can figure this is a Celtic territory that this is outlined. There's where Stonehenge points to. And strangely enough, it points to the Gomera. It points to Lisbon. It points to Coruña de Galicia. It points to all the major Celtic ports around the North Sea. It points to the entrance to the Northwest Passage. It points here to a place where Leif Erikson made his voyages out of. It points to the Tinti Tikalik geoglyph. It points to the very corner of where Canada and the United States meet, and you'll see that in a minute at a close-up. It also points to Labrador, not Labrador, but Newfoundland, on either side. And this is Stonehenge being known to people on the inside have argued for hundreds of years whether the Vikings went any further south than Newfoundland. I have a feeling this is what they were talking about, but you're going to see when I show you this geoglyph, which is Viking made, that they went a little further than that later. There's Inspiration Peak in the United States. It seems that on these geoglyphs, there's at least one radial that points to the starting point of the geoglyph next to it. What program would be complete without showing the pyramids? This is an example of a square geoglyph with a cross in the middle. And I followed all the radials that come on the square, and I got nothing, which proves my point that you can't just draw a line somewhere and it'll cross a reference point. That doesn't happen. The only radials that I could find that were significant were the 45 radial and the 135 radial. The 45 radial points to the tip of South America. I suspect that's a pretty important point. The other one points to the tip of Baja California. That reference point is used many, many times over the ancient times. Now that I've found these 2 points, the tip of South America and the tip of Baja California, I'm stuck. I don't have any other information to proceed from that. So the only information I had was the 135 radial and the 45 radial out of Egypt. So I applied them to these 2 points, and this is what I got. The 45 radial from Baja comes to that point right there, which is, at the time, was in Galicia. That's Galicia right now today. It's a province in Spain, but they kept the same name. And Coruña, the port of Coruña, which is Celtic, was right there. But the 45 from Baja points to that point right there. Strangely enough, the 45 from the tip of South America points there also. If you take and use that radial and that radial on the ground right there, you effectively have the boundaries of the Celtic Empire. Now, that could be open to speculation, So, and all these geoglyphs, they always give you two solutions. So you can, it's like proving your work, your math in school. They always give you two solutions so you know you have the correct solution to the problem. Now, I didn't have any way to prove that, so I looked on the ground, and sure enough, there's a geoglyph on the ground right where those two things come together. There's a Celtic Empire around 1300. In reality, it kind of goes up, splits Portugal and Galicia. Well, Galicia's included, but the northern half of Portugal was in cahoots with the Galicians, not the southern half. Okay, once again, I was showing you Stonehenge and where it points to Greenland. Okay, now that is the Tinitikalik geoglyph in Greenland. And as you can see, just like I was telling you about buildings, the wall around this geoglyph has various angles to it, and all of those point to a significant spot. You have a structure here in the middle with walls that point in different directions. And I don't know if you can see it, but right there you have another array. And there's all kinds of stuff in here if you give a close-up, which I'm going to show you right now. There's a close-up of the north side. And you've got a square there. Several things here that I could see on a closer inspection, which you can't see. Another thing, too, about these geoglyphs, there's always going to be a 90-degree or a 360 or 180-degree or 270-degree radial in the thing, which validates that that's a genuine geoglyph. There's the southern half. And as you can see, all the walls and the structures inside the thing point somewhere. There's the radials of the Tinitikalik, which was made by the Vikings. And really, it's not a whole lot different from Stonehenge, except they've moved their boundaries over. And now you can see they only take up the towns of Coruña and Lisbon, Portugal. The three oldest towns that I've found in Atlantic is Lisbon, Veracruz, and Mexico City. They've moved the boundary of Norway from there to there. And down here's the most important part. They've moved the southern boundary of the Vikings' territory from there down to Newport. Once again, Newport, Rhode Island figures into the thing. Here we have the southern end of the Hudson Bay. This right here is the entrance to a river where you have access down into the Central America. And once again, oh, that right there, that's called Magnet Island. That's where they got their lodestone and for their compasses from. Okay, if anybody doesn't believe that the Vikings were down as far south as Newport, Rhode Island, there's a Viking mooring stone, which is a big boulder with a hole in the top to drive their metal rings into to secure their boats, and they just run a rope from here out to their boat to secure it. The holes in all these mooring stones are triangular. They put lead down in that hole and then drive a circular thing with a stem on it down into that hole, and it would secure it. There's a number of the mooring stones along the coast of Newport, Rhode Island. Okay, Inspiration Peak. Once again, I put Stonehenge up there. It's right here. There's Inspiration Peak from the air. It's not impressive. The hill is only like 1,500 feet high. However, it is the highest point in that area. And this is Inspiration Peak right here where we're going to talk about. Oh, incidentally, Sinclair Lewis, which an author that we all know about, and he was a Mason, chided the governor of Minnesota for not knowing the importance of Inspiration Peak. And now they have a marker down here with Sinclair Lewis's name on it. These here to validate Inspiration Peak as a legitimate geoglyph. These are all the points that I know of at the present time that point to Inspiration Peak. Okay, there's the Mona Lisa of geoglyphs. Inspiration Peak is nothing more than a circle of cleared trees. And so in its own, it's not very impressive. But where it's situated is what makes it impressive. It's 3,080 miles from the equator, 3,080 miles from the North Pole. It's 1,362 miles from the corner of the United States and 1,362 miles from the corner of the United States. It's also 1,360 miles from there to the tip of Texas. Strangely enough, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, if you know what magnetic deviation is in the compass, this one here is 20 degrees minus magnetic deviation. This one's 20 degrees plus magnetic deviation. So the entire thing is symmetrical and not really open to circumstance. Come on, don't let me down now. Okay, here's the geoglyph that's at the very northwest corner of the United States that all these things were pointing to. And it just happens to be on the first island south of Vancouver, which is in the United States. The line between the two designates the boundary of the United States and Canada. And there's the square geoglyph that was put there as a marker by the ancients to designate the northwest corner of the United States. And of course, the United States was not there at the time, but it does designate the area that we now call the United States as a very important place to everyone in the past years. And we should be proud of that. Once again, we have this line here that runs 090 and 270, which designates this as a legitimate geoglyph. And strangely enough, that points to the other boundary over here, the other tip of the United States. This one points to the tip of Florida. And this one points to the north end of the Bay of Baja California. That's the geoglyph at the northeast corner of the United States. As you can see, it's two circles. And if you run a line from that one through that one, you've got an important part. And it just so happens. How many people in here know what the Kensington runestone is? Okay, I can see I'm going to have to explain that a little better. This points to an island up here in the St. Lawrence Seaway that is the key to solving the mystery of the Kensington, not the Kensington, but the Newport Tower in Newport, Rhode Island. And through solving that problem, you find out the importance of the Kensington runestone in Kensington, Minnesota. Kensington runestone is important in outlining the later boundaries of the United States. And you'll see a copy of it here in a minute. That's the southern boundary in Texas of that 1,362-mile line. And there's no doubt that that's a geoglyph with a lake right there. It fits nicely right into that notch. Okay. If we throw Sulphur City, Oklahoma into the mix, it's located right here, right on this line. And from that geoglyph, you get a point here to San Diego, just south of San Diego Bay. You get a line to the southern tip of Florida, and you get a line to Piney Point, Maryland. Now this one here is significant in that the people that made this geoglyph were claiming Central America. And you'll see how that works here in a minute. In addition to this, they were also claiming Central America. Well, that didn't work out. As you'll see in a minute. Okay, there's the Sulphur City geoglyph with all its angles. Now there's the Piney Point geoglyph. And it points down to a point just to the right of where Panama connects with Colombia. And there it is. points to this point just to the right of Panama and claims this whole area here as part of this territory up here. As you can see, it goes right through the center of Mexico City going to this other point in Baja California. I doubt if that's a mistake either. There's that North American territory again. Okay, now we're going to go with Chichen Itza, which is in central Mexico on the Gulf Coast side. And you can see the angles here, all the different angles. You've got the angles of the pyramid here with these different angles here too. You can see that's some more angles, different angles here. No more angles here. As you can see, that's not perpendicular to here, and this is not perpendicular to that either. But you've got a myriad of lines in here to work with. When you plot them all out, this is the territory that the Yucatan Peninsula, probably the Mayans, claimed as their territory, which was the Yucatan Peninsula, and all around the Mediterranean, the Gulf of Mexico. Now, what's interesting is that all these territories that are designated do not overlap. And if you'll notice, this one goes from right there to right there, which leaves out this area here. Now, in a minute, you're going to see that that area belongs to the South American territory. That, too, couldn't be an accident. Come on, baby. Okay, this is Corral, Peru, which is about 100 miles north of Lima, Peru. This is an ancient city. At the time it was discovered, it was the oldest city in South America, 10,000 years old. As you can see, it's got four main parts. You got a building here, one there, and one down here. All those buildings have unparalleled walls that point somewhere. And I plotted them all out, and you'll see where they go. There's the Corral, Peru geoglyph. As you can see, this one goes out to Galapagos. That one points to Chichen Itza, which, like I said, Stonehenge pointed Inspiration Peak. Corral, Peru points to Chichen Itza, to give you an idea of a starting point for the next territory. Now remember I said that Chichen Itza didn't claim this area in here. Well, lo and behold, South America does. Here's an example of where you go to the tip of a continent. That right there is the largest open-face gold mine in the world. And right there is a circle that I'm getting ready to show you that is very important in plotting the double check to make sure that you've got this correct. Like I said, they always provide two solutions to the same problem. Now there's a circle that's 22 and a half miles wide, that's man-made, that's in the center of South America. Now it's 10,000 years old. Now you have a river running through the middle of it. But it's obvious that there's a circle there. And the Corral, Peru geoglyph has a radial that runs right there on this side and another radial that runs on this side. That's how I found it. Also, 22 and a half miles is significant to the people that put these geoglyphs down, and I haven't figured out why, but this is 22 and a half miles wide. Around Inspiration Peak, every 10 degrees is a geoglyph, and they're 22 and a half miles from Inspiration Peak. And Stonehenge has an important geoglyph out to the east of it that's 22 and a half miles from Stonehenge. That points out the fact that 22 and a half miles means something, but I haven't quite figured out yet what it means. Okay, here's the double check of that geoglyph to make sure you've got it right. This here is the remains of a meteor crater. And what this thing was trying to do is show you that they want to bring your eye to the center of this meteor crater. Now, if you run a line from the center of that meteor crater to the Galapagos and back to that circle I just showed you, you've got a perfect equilateral triangle. Now, if you run a line from that meteor crater through the circle I showed you, it winds up at the very tip of South America. I think most of us have probably heard of Diego Rivera, the most famous painter, artist in Mexico. That's one of his paintings that's on the walls of the palace in Mexico City. He was commissioned to make that. Okay, the mural is a depiction of Michoacan, Mexico, which is a couple hundred miles northwest of Mexico City. And it has this beautiful lake and a beautiful volcano here. And lo and behold, this is the area and the view that's shown in Diego's painting. There's his painting with the radios on it, which means that Diego Rivera was aware of geoglyphography. And I'm not surprised because he associated with the very top echelon in Mexico, in the United States, and in Russia. And all those people know about this, and he was right up there with them, which proves the point that they know about it now and they knew about it then, but commoners like us just have been left out of the loop. I would have never found out about it if they hadn't had Google Earth and satellites. So maybe it's the time to bring this stuff out. As you can see, this designates 360 degrees, and there's many lines in this thing that if you use Michoacan as the central point and then plot out all these radials, it forms another territory. There's the endpoints of all those radials. Now this is really interesting. This is Diego Rivera's Michoacan mural with all the radials figured. Now isn't it a coincidence that it takes in the Stonehenge territory, the Viking territory, the North American territory, the South American territory. That goes to the tip of South America. And it goes to these islands out here too. So his mural encompasses all the territories that I just showed you, which kind of says something. And I'm sure you can figure it out. Okay, the United States, that's what we started out with. And like I said, I think the Vikings put this here. And a lot of these territories are being honored today. When Japan went to war, they tried to get back the territory of this depicted in the Yonaguni Pyramid in Japan. I ran it out, and the territory that it depicts matches almost exactly with the territory that the Japanese were trying to acquire in the Second World War, except for China. I think that's where the downfall was invading China because they weren't supposed to have it. But anyway, this is what Sulphur City and Inspiration Peak point out. And as far as other countries are concerned, they probably only recognize this much, as you will see here in a minute. Okay, there's the Newport Tower that formed the right leg claiming Central America. And as far as I know, I'm the only person that solved that mystery using geoglyphography. It's been a mystery ever since the colonists came over. If you want to know more about that, I could give an hour lecture on that myself. But if you want to know more, there's the website to look that explains all about it. But it plays an important part in the boundaries of the United States. In fact, there's the radial that comes off of that. It's oriented 093 degrees, and this is 183 degrees. So the Newport Tower changed the boundary of Sulphur City from right here to down here. And then it's not a coincidence that this goes to the very point where the equator meets this line. Now, if you draw a line from there up to here, you take in even more of Central America. I suspect that in negotiations between the Portuguese and Celts, which were here real early, and maybe some other countries over here, or Portugal when they broke off and went to Spain and aligned with them. About 1300 that happened. That this may have been given as a route to the Pacific. There's the Kensington runestone, which I'll show you the radials in a moment. It's been proven that this is all in Norse glyphs, and it's been proven that if it's genuine, it was made by Norsemen. There again is the website if you want to look that up. Okay, there's the territory, the amended territory. Remember you had the Newport, the Piney Point, Maryland geoglyph that pointed to the first point down by Panama and Columbia. And then you had the Newport Tower that pointed to the amended place that went down to Ecuador and the equator. Now you've got the Kensington runestone in the Newport Tower that designates another area, which is right from this corner to that corner, which is not changed from the other geoglyphs. And you've got Newport Tower that comes down here, but the Kensington runestone, which was found up here in Minnesota, stops right there. Then goes over here to the tip of Baja. Now if you take and run a line from there to there and from there to there, you have what the Greeks and everybody else called in geometry the perfect triangle, which is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Incidentally, what got me onto the Newport Tower is that when I was doing in fact, that's what got me into this. I was doing my genealogy on my family, which is Celtic. Since they were important in their time, I was able to trace my genealogy back to 43 BC in Caronia de Galatia. But that's a whole nother story. But that's what got me interested in that. And when I was doing my family research, someone said, "Where is the Templar treasure?" And someone answered them, "It's under a large triangle, which is so big that only God can see it." And I think you just saw it with that 30, 60, 90 triangle, which again points out the importance of the country that we live in. Okay, here's something that is very important to the story we're telling right now. Here you have a Mayan pyramid in Tenerife, Canary Islands. I don't know if you're familiar with